What if I told you that most artists struggle with the same thing, no matter their age, style, or experience? And to prove that, I ran a survey quite a while back. So far back, in fact, that I completely forgot about it. And over the span of almost 2 years, it has become one of the greatest privately made surveys about artists and their habits ever. And with that said, let's see what thousands upon thousands of artists from all over the world, from beginner to professional, think about their habits. Because the results are honestly quite comforting and maybe a little alarming. With this survey, I wanted to break down what artists are really stuck on, what they think matters most, and how you can use this information to improve faster without burning out or just guessing in the dark. But before we jump into advice, let's set the stage. Most people who answered this survey are between 16 and 30 years old. They practice for about an hour a day, and they have been practicing art for around 1 to 5 years. And most importantly, an overwhelming amount of them think that art is not a talent and is absolutely learnable by anyone and everyone. And that last thing is where the money's at, because most artists want to improve. They just don't know where to aim their effort. And that's exactly where this video comes in. Now let's start with the biggest struggle. When artists were asked, what is the hardest fundamental? Anatomy won by a lot. Not perspective, not color, and not rendering. Anatomy. And when they were asked, what skill do you feel like you are lacking the most? Anatomy showed up again. And these two questions tell us that most artists, they respect anatomy. So much so that they kind of put off learning it until it's almost too late. Their art skill in almost all the different fundamentals has skyrocketed by now. However, their knowledge about anatomy is still quite limited and doesn't hold up to par. But learning it the last, or not enough at first, is not the only thing why anatomy is so hard for so many artists. It's because when we draw the human structure or a body structure of a creature, we have to combine many different fundamentals into one, and that one is anatomy. So broken down, anatomy is just a amassing of fundamentals that takes shape in the form of a human or a creature. And learning it seems so rigorous and hard because you need to learn all the fundamentals at once. And this tells us why you always hear professional artists say you have to simplify the anatomy. Just draw the shapes first and add details later. And that's exactly it. It's using the complex structure of anatomy, simplifying it into simple shapes you can draw in perspective, and then adding the details and the complexity later. But let's move on from just anatomy and get into a little more broad spectrum of questions. When these artists were asked, what is the most important fundamental and what is the easiest fundamental to learn? People answered, aside from anatomy of course, perspective. But the catch is, we found out that a lot of people, they lack anatomical knowledge and the drawing skills to convey them, which is reflected in these graphs. However, the fundamental of perspective is telling a different story. It comes in second place, right under anatomy, for being the most important art fundamental, but is also a very high contender when it comes to being easy to learn. This tells us something very important, because this means that artists underestimate the fundamental that they are learning. As we've gone over, anatomy is just a amassment of other art fundamentals, especially perspective. And by saying perspective is pretty easy and anatomy is very hard, we have kind of a contradiction. But only if you look at perspective as the basic cube and sphere in a 3D environment. Because in reality, perspective encompasses posing, backgrounds, camera angles, and even anatomy. Since if you draw an arm and it's not right in perspective, it just doesn't look good. The anatomy could be right, but the perspective of it is wrong. It tells us that most artists, they feel done with perspective when they can make cubes and spheres and pyramids. So they move on happily to another art fundamental, without regarding the intertwining section of perspective and anatomy for this case. So for everyone struggling with anatomy and a little bit of perspective, revisit the fundamental. Do perspective with characters inside of an environment. Do shading with clear light logic and not just weirdly soft blending. The fundamentals don't end when you're done with your work about these exact fundamentals. They intertwine with each other and evolve into different and more complex things. Now let's shift the post from technical skills and fundamentals to working habits. Most asked artists practice from anywhere between 0 to 2 hours a day and spend around 3 to 10 hours on a finished piece, which means that most artists spend around a week for their artworks. Now, this can be because of work, school, or other hobbies. But the takeaway is that most artists, they have one piece that they are happy and finished with within a week. And according to the data, a lot of these are taking even longer. And here's the trap. Long projects don't automatically equal improvement, even if you draw every day a little bit on it. If you paint a masterful illustration and it takes you 2 months, you still painted one picture. And even though it will most likely be the best piece that you have ever drawn, the experience points you get out of it are quite minimal. If every drawing you do should be a final piece, then you're not practicing your art skill, you're practicing your presentation. And my advice for those people, especially the beginners that still need to get a grasp on the fundamentals, is to split your time. Do 70% studies and 30% polished work that you feel super proud of. These 70% studies, they don't need to see the light of day. They can be as messy as they want, because messy practice is not failure. It's just progress, and progress is always messy. Now, let's shift the pose another time. Let's go to talent. You know, the way that you think an artist is very talented when he's very good at art. Especially the beginning artists that are watching this will benefit the most from this, because I have asked these thousands of artists if they have ever traced a picture and if they think that art talent is innate and cannot be learned. And with the tracing aspect, a lot of people have actually admitted to doing it, which is a good thing, because let's be honest, tracing is not a crime. And the dark number of people that have traced and still said no is probably half of the bar that you're seeing right now. Now, as I said, tracing is not bad. It only becomes bad if you don't analyze what you're tracing or you never try to redraw it from memory. It's really good to learn the shapes and shape language of a specific thing. Hell, in the art industry for films and games, there's a lot of people that trace over a specific image to get comfortable with the art style and the shapes that they should use. And when it comes to talent, most of the artists say that they do not believe talent is innate. And that is huge, because let's be honest, everybody can learn art. Some may be faster, some may be slower. However, everybody can learn it at their own pace. It's not a race. The real enemy of artists that are just beginning, or even intermediate level artists, is not talent or their talentlessness. It is directionless effort. Now let's stay in the very helpful for beginners category, but shift a little away from talent and is it innate or not. Because I have also asked, what was the best art advice that people have ever received? And the top answers in this open question, where people could write out what they think was important, was practice consistently, study the fundamentals, and don't compare yourself to others. And let's be real here. Everybody here watching this video has heard these things a dozen times. But now, after watching this video, you know where to put the effort of these 3 things. Practice consistently doesn't mean you have one illustration you work on for 2 months straight, every day a little bit. Study the fundamentals doesn't mean if you can draw a cube and a sphere in perfect perspective from memory, then you're done. And most importantly, don't compare yourself to others, because you have no idea how long they have been practicing art, how serious they do it every day, and what their background is. The internet is a vast place of various people and artists from all around the world. They have different backgrounds and they have different starting points in art. Do not ever compare yourself to one of these. Only compare yourself to the past you. So, as a little takeaway, if you're a beginner, then focus on structure and not on polishing anything. Anatomy starts simple and not with details. And draw more bad drawings and draw faster. Don't draw 1 good drawing in a week. Draw 7 bad ones in 1 day. And if you're an intermediate artist struggling with getting better, then revisit the fundamentals with the intention of combining them and evolving your knowledge through that. Identify just one weak area and not 10 and work on this. And practice for a reason and not just to feel productive. Always remember that you're not stuck because you're bad or untalented. You're stuck because you didn't have a map and didn't know where to go. Now you have one. And with that said, I wish you all happy drawing. In the background, you will have a little collage of all the 15 questions, I think, that I have asked the survey takers. And in the description is a little disclaimer on how I analyzed and processed all this huge amount of data. I'd like to thank each and every one for participating in this survey. It will undoubtedly help a lot of beginner artists that stumble upon this nonchalant video. And if you've liked what you've heard here, then drop a comment, like the video, so another beginner artist has this video in his recommendation and may improve as well. Happy drawing, and until next time.